And then I started to notice pockets of time when I was learning something new, nothing to do with pain. I would have no pain at all.
You were doing something for your own joy, which is one of my core recommendations for people because they often are not the sorts of people who do that very often. So that's so important that you were able to shift your focus.
Welcome to The Story Behind the Symptoms, a podcast from symptomatic.me. Your host is David Clark, MD, a board-certified gastroenterologist who successfully diagnosed and treated over 7,000 patients with neuroplastic pain or illness. Each episode, we dive into our guests' life experiences to uncover the deeper causes of their symptoms. By listening to their story, you will gain insights that advance your own journey towards knowledge that becomes healing.
Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Symptoms podcast. I am your host, Dr. David Clark, and in this podcast we talk about pain and other physical symptoms that are caused by a brain-to-body neuroplastic process. And I interview people who've been through this about their journey, usually ending in their healing, which is remarkable. And my guest today is Gemma, and why don't you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. Yeah, so I'm Gemma. I live on the completely other side of the world to you. I'm over here in the Middle East in Dubai. We've been here since 2010. From like a career point of view, I am now a chronic pain coach. I'm also a specialist that goes into corporates to do psychological safety, which actually addresses the root cause of a lot of the stress at work, which then prevents chronic pain. So yeah, that's me. I'm a mother of two, 9 and 11 years old. My kids, and I'm very excited to share my story.
Yes, wonderful. I so appreciate your doing this. Well, let's go ahead and get started with it. I like to begin with the person's initial symptoms, how long ago they started, and what their course has been over time.
My initial symptoms was a back pain, and which obviously I can look back now and see it was 2 weeks before I moved from the UK to live abroad. I didn't obviously make the connection at the time, but yeah, back pain that just progressed the same way for most people, gets worse and worse and worse. Physio, osteopath, chiropractor, injections. I was doing all of these things, assuming that eventually it would get better. But what actually happened, I just adapted my life around the pain. I stopped a lot of the sport I used to do, stopped running, and I got rid of all my high shoes, and I just very gradually over about 8-9 years, I just stopped being me, and the pain got worse and worse. So yeah, that was my initial symptoms.
And of course, as you say, you got attention from lots of different medical professionals, all of them focused on a biomedical cause, a structural cause for the back pain, and got treatments on that basis, which didn't work. And it's not unusual for people to go a decade or sometimes more looking for answers and then finally finding something that works. So how did that happen for you?
We moved from Dubai to live in Sri Lanka, and that was a big move for us. At the time, I had a 6-month-old and a 1-year-old. I was in a full-time corporate job. My husband had actually gone ahead of me, so I was left in Dubai with the kids on my own with back pain, working my notice period. At the time, I was a HR director, looking after 2 hotels, hundreds of staff members, and it was just too much. And the pain got worse and worse and worse. And we arrived in Sri Lanka on January 1, 2017. And I think it just hit me as we arrived there. I had no friends, no family, no anything. I literally knew nobody in Sri Lanka. And then about 2 weeks after we arrived there, my husband had to go back to the Middle East for work. And that really hit me that I was in a country on my own with 2 little kids. And at this point, I couldn't even lift them up. My back hurt so much, I couldn't lift them into a high chair or anything. I think the fear around all of that, so the pain was through the roof.
Just out of my own curiosity, how serious is the language barrier for an English-speaking person in Sri Lanka? Is it English widely spoken, or because that could certainly add to things?
It's widely spoken. I think for me, the biggest fear was it's a developing country. So getting even the basic stuff, supermarket, I couldn't get I want to say pushchair, but You call it something different. Stroller. I couldn't get this stroller to the supermarket because all the pavement's broken. So even just walking anywhere and traveling places in a tuk-tuk. Do you know what a tuk-tuk is? It's like a little...
Yeah, it's a combination of bicycle and taxi cab.
Yeah, it's like a rickshaw type thing. And if you can imagine having back pain and being in something that's like jolting you like this, it brought tears to my eyes. The pain was excruciating. There's no seatbelts, and I'm trying to hold these two tiny children with back pain. It's boiling hot. It was just awful. Like it wasn't an adventure, but it was awful. And so I went to see a chiropractor there. I'd already seen chiropractors and osteopaths and all sorts in Dubai. And the chiropractor looked at my MRI scan and he said, I can't touch you, not with a back like this. And that then made more fear, which then pushed me down the surgery route. And the medical system in Sri Lanka is very, very basic. So I'm being pushed around here, there, and everywhere. And eventually they sort of agreed, yeah, you need surgery. And I thought, I am not having surgery in Sri Lanka. Like, there is just no way. And so I found a surgeon in Singapore. And he said to me, you fly from Sri Lanka to Singapore. I'll give you this treatment that you need, this surgery. And then you can, 2 days later, fly back to Sri Lanka and you'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, finally, I found someone that's going to do something for me. I was so relieved. And so I went ahead and tried to arrange it with the insurance company, and they blocked it. And they said, no, absolutely not. You are not being operated on by a surgeon that's never met you. And so they kind of put the hold on it, and they suggested doing this thing called a second opinion. It's with Cigna, it's the insurance company. It's this second opinion thing. So then 3 different surgeons in 3 different countries with 3 different backgrounds, they got all my case notes from the previous 10 years or whatever it was that I'd been doing this. And they all had to come back with their recommendation. And all 3 of them came back with dramatically different suggestions of different types of surgery. And I was like,
oh, but it was all surgery.
Well, actually, to be fair, one of them said just continue with physio and medication.
Which had not worked for you in 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, one of them said something ablation, or what's it called?
A nerve ablation, yes. There is actually a research paper not too long ago that compared that with a sham ablation, where you pretend to do the ablation, but you don't actually do the ablation. And they compare the results of that with the real ablation, either by radio frequency or by freezing the nerve. And it turned out the results were exactly the same, whether you damaged the nerve, cut the nerve, or not. So clearly, any improvement that you get from a procedure like that is due to the placebo effect of believing it's going to help you. And so it does to a certain extent. But it's certainly not something that we want to base our treatment on. And what you're experiencing is such a common story that the medical profession assumes that there is a structural cause and focuses all of their treatment energy and effort and thought on finding solutions in that area. And at least so far, nobody has brought up the idea that this might be a brain-to-body condition, a neuroplastic condition, which we now know from a study done 2 years ago is responsible for 88% of back pain. So you would hope that at least somebody would have said, you might try this. All right, so what happened next? Give me some hope here, Gemma.
Yeah. Do you know what happened? At the time, I was retraining to be an executive coach. And so we're coaching each other as part of this classroom-based thing on Zoom. And I was the client. And this girl said to me, what do you want to be coached on? And I said, well, I want to cut my back off. I can't live like this anymore. This is not sustainable. I'm in a really dark place. So she tried to coach me in front of a whole classroom full of people for 20 minutes, unsuccessfly, obviously, because that's a big topic for 20 minutes. But the tutor on the call, who's observing the coaching, he suggested I read the John Sarno Healing Back Pain book. And something in me just thought, I've never, ever seen this tutor give anybody advice, ever. His job on the call is to give the coach advice on her coaching. And I thought, you know what, there's something in this. So I bought the book. I read.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt briefly, this person, the coach trainer has no medical background. Is that right? I mean, they're not a physician or a psychologist or...
Not at all. He, I think, has been through his own journey with pain.
Okay.
And so that's why he had suggested the book. But the fact that he'd given any tip to me, like I just know he never gives help to anybody because he's not supposed to. Like he kind of went out of the remit of his job as a trainer on the call. So I was like, oh, there's something in this. I read the first 2-3 chapters of the book and I immediately knew, especially the stuff about personality. I was like, yeah, this is definitely me. And then what I did, I went back, the 3 people that gave me the 3 surgeons that gave me the 3 options. I went back to the one that has suggested carry on with physio because I thought that's the least, intrusive one. And I emailed him and I said, I've just found out about this thing about doctors. What do you think? Would you recommend, based on all my case notes, that I look into this approach? And he came back to me with it looked like he copied and pasted loads of stuff off Google, and he just sent me all this stuff about John Sarno, and he said, well, based on what I'm reading, it looks like it could be a good option for you. And he said, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose by going down this approach? And I have to be honest, I think I needed a medical professional to tell me, yes, it's okay for you to try this. And I think that, yes, it's okay for you to try it, gave me the confidence just to jump in with 2 feet.
Yeah, this is something that we teach people to do is, when you reach a certain level of diagnostic evaluation, just to ask your doctor, would it be okay if I looked into the possibility of stress causing my pain or illness? And physicians are often reluctant to bring this up themselves because they're not comfortable doing it. They're afraid the patient is going to throw them out of the room and say, look, my symptoms are real. I'm not imagining this. It's not all in my head. And the patient is going to get very angry. And they will if you bring this up in the wrong way. And I try to teach my medical audiences ways to talk about this that are more constructive and mutually supportive. Physicians love to have people ask them about this because when a diagnostic evaluation is negative for structural causes or organ disease, they're at a loss of what to do next. And if the patient gives them a viable option and is indicating they're willing to go down this road, most of the physicians are going to say yes.
Yeah. I'm forever grateful for these 2 people, the trainer that gave me the book and the surgeon that suggested, yeah, go for it.
So how long did it take to start showing results?
See, I'm a specialist in personality profiling tools. And I had just about 1 month before moving to Sri Lanka, I'd just gone through the certification for this. So I'm a Gallup Strengths coach. So the first thing I did was turn my training back on myself. And I thought, right, let's see which of my natural personality traits are causing the, self-induced pressure. And then I was very quickly able to identify exactly what it was that was causing me stress from a personality point of view. But I also identified very, very quickly that there are certain parts of my personality I was using in Dubai when I had my corporate job. But since being in Sri Lanka, now I'm just staying at home with the kids in pain, I wasn't using any of my natural talents, which was actually, I can see now, was actually causing me lots and lots of pain. Not having purpose, not using my personality traits, not doing anything. So then I started to actively do things at home to make sure I was using my natural talents. So I'll give you a really silly example. One of my traits is learner. Like I just love learning, like in an obsessive way. Like I just love learning. And so what I did when I had back pain, I turned all my focus to learning about back surgery, which obviously put me into a downward spiral of doom because there's nothing good on Google about back surgery.
Not much.
Exactly. I was using my biggest personality trait of learner to go in a downward spiral of doom. But the minute I got onto this Sarno book, I used the learner to focus on that Sarno book, but also just to learn stuff that lit me up. So every day I was watching TED Talks on topics, any random topic that I thought might interest me. And then I started to notice pockets of time when I was learning something new, nothing to do with pain. I would have no pain at all.
You were doing something for your own joy, which is one of my core recommendations for people because they often are not the sorts of people who do that very often. So that's so important that you were able to shift your focus. Before we go on, do you mind sharing some of the personality traits that you think were contributing to your condition?
Yes, but it's kind of in my language from the tool. So there's one called achiever, and people with achiever, they love ticking jobs off task lists. Like really, they have a lot of stamina and energy. And like when we go bed at night, if we haven't achieved 1,000 things, we feel like massive disappointment. So this is like one of my biggest one, I would say. But coupled with that was futuristic. So one of my traits is I love to dream about the future. I'm always imagining what could be, what should be. And I think,
Me too.
yes, I think this is why I'm so attracted to this work, because it feels like I know where we will be in 50 years from now. Like I'm so excited about the future of all this. But with pain, the future looked very bleak. So I was imagining a future in a wheelchair. I was always like I could only use this personality trait for negative reasons. But then again, when I flipped it and realized like that futuristic trait is causing me the problem, I actively started to imagine, what do I want to do when I've got no pain? I started imagining very vividly running behind my son on his bike when he learned to ride his bike. At this point, he was only 1 year old. But I was like picturing, in 5 years from now, this is going to be me. So that was two of the big ones, achiever and futuristic, and obviously learner was a disaster.
All right. So you were finally making some very important 180-degree turns in these personality traits. And how long did it take for your pain to make real progress?
It was 3 months until
3 months.
but I made very good progress very quickly because I felt the fear had gone down and I had an overwhelming sense of hope because I just knew that this was the answer. Like I could feel it in my bones, but it was 3 months until I had what I called a PFD, which is a pain-free day. And I know this because I kept a log every day. I wrote down because I kept thinking if I can help myself, I will specialize my coaching to help other people. So I wanted the logbook so I knew how that I did it.
Well, you're also a very detail-oriented person.
Yeah. But I noticed wins very early on, just like pockets of time. Like I started volunteering at my son's school. It's like a play school, a baby school. And for the duration of the time I was at the school, I had no symptoms. And then I only had symptoms in the afternoon. So my evidence log, very quickly, my brain realized like, well, this doesn't make sense. You're at a school full of shouting, crying children and you have no pain. And then you go home and you sit on your own and you're in agony. But it's because I need to be with people. That my character is to be with people.
Yeah, and your back clearly doesn't know where it is. Only your brain knows where it is, whether it's in a school or not. And so that's clearly strong evidence that the brain is involved in your condition. Well, that's, after 10 years of pain to achieve relief in 3 months is just remarkable. I'm curious, and I always ask my guests this. Was there anything that you went through when you were a child that might have contributed to these powerful personality traits that you have?
Other than just being a perfect child.
Okay, well, that's kind of a clue there that, there was something about your environment that made perfection the goal or the way to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I've looked back over it a number of times. I think I was rewarded for being a good girl, and I think predominantly that's the main thing. It was largely around the personality traits that I had was in school, you celebrate and you reward the children who are the high achievers, who are the perfectionists, the people pleasers, highly responsible, like all of these characteristics, analytical, like all of these are the ones where the teacher's like, yeah, you're amazing because you're all of these things. And so I kept doing more and more and more of them because you're being recognized for them.
Yeah, and these are exactly the kind of people that we want to be, our friend, our spouse, our coworker, our neighbor. But obviously, at a certain point, these are traits that can go too far, and the body can protest. In response to that, the body can start to tell us that these things have reached an unsustainable level. And often the line that is crossed is when you are so focused on everybody else that you can't put yourself on the list of people that you take care of. And many of my patients, if you ask them, what do you do for your own joy? They didn't have enough there, let's put it that way. Would you say that was true of you during this period of time, that you had the pain?
Yes, because I was a HR director. So the very nature of the job, you're looking after like 500 people. If I can give you an actual example of this. When I was on maternity leave, my second maternity leave, actually, interestingly, I had very little back pain during both pregnancies. No surprise there. I thought it's because my spine had like moved into a different angle. But anyway, after the second one, after my daughter was born, I had an emergency C-section. But about 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that, there was an incident in the hotel, very, very serious incident with a staff member that was in intensive care. And I came off maternity leave to go back to work to deal with that because I couldn't not be there. Like every bone in my body was like, I cannot leave this staff member in hospital on her own. There was other
2 or
people.
3 weeks after an emergency C-section.
And it never crossed my mind that wasn't an appropriate thing to do. I had to be there. Like I had to. Yeah, it was. But now I look back on it and I think I didn't have to be there. Like there was a lot of other people that worked with me. My number 2 was there every day with her. But something in me was like, nope, it has to be you.
Yeah, it's living almost as if on a treadmill that's very hard to step off when you have this focus on the needs of others and on details. And, it's very, very good for people and those around them up to a certain point. But like any good thing, it can go too far. Okay, you recovered from the back pain and then you started getting a rash, as I recall.
Yes. Gosh, that seems like such a long time ago now. Yeah, I'd completely got rid of the back pain, and by this point, I was now operating as a pain coach, helping other people. And then I had I started getting a rash all over both my arms and both my legs. The rash went on for like a year, but it looked like huge mosquito bites that were constantly just getting irritated. And the treatment plan I was on from my Sri Lankan medical team, I had to sleep with steroid cream on all the rashes, and then I had to put cling film around my arms and around my legs to keep the steroid cream in place overnight. And I slept like this all the time for like months. This was going on a year. I had this for like a year. I'd had all the blood tests for everything. Anyway, I was then working with a client who had a daughter that had a skin issue, and she asked me in passing, like, can this mind-body thing, be a skin thing? And suddenly I was like, oh my goodness, like, yes, of course it can. And so then I realized, like, I wonder if my skin rash is a mind-body thing. And I went
All right,
back.
but before we go down that road, did they give you a diagnosis and did the treatment help?
And no, they didn't give me a diagnosis. They were looking at all sorts of things. Yeah, there was no diagnosis at all. They just thought that the steroid cream might help. But no, it definitely didn't help. But you don't do nothing, do you? When a doctor says this is what you do it. And it seems stupid now, like sleeping with cling film on my arms. What was I thinking? But anyway.
Yeah, I think if it didn't work after, a week or 2 or 3, probably would be time to stop at that point.
Yeah, but again, with the type of personality where someone tells you what to do and you're a good person, you just follow the rules. You just keep.
No, I was thinking of the physicians involved, that, if they were diagnosing a condition that steroid cream would be expected to help, and if there's no benefit at all after a couple of weeks, then you need to start looking for a different diagnosis.
Yeah, I think we'd kind of reached the end of the line by the time they did the steroid cream. We'd tried so many other things before that. So I went back to an old diary that I used to keep a diary of everything, actually. And I went back to look at what day did the rash start. And I realized very quickly, as soon as I looked at the diary, the rash started just after the terrorist attack that happened on Sri Lanka. So there was 3 international hotels and 3 churches that were all targeted on Easter Sunday, 2019. And we were obviously living right in the middle of that as expatriates. And so we were very heavily involved in it because the hotel my husband worked for was one of the targets. So we got I got out. I left my husband in Sri Lanka to work with the police and the team of what needed to be done. And I took the kids back to Dubai for about 20 days.
Yeah, and it was, as I remember, also an anti-Christian attack.
It was 3 Christian churches.
Yeah, so that anybody that was potentially suspected of being a Christian might be a target.
Yeah. Many people were killed. It was very bad. I think it was the second largest terrorist attack after 9/11 at the time. It was very, very, very traumatic. And the place we lived, in front of our apartment building, there was a hotel that was one of the targets, and behind our building was the other hotel that was a target, and the third hotel was the one my husband worked at. So we were right literally in the middle of
In the middle.
Yeah. So you do what you do. So I had to get the kids out. So I left my partner in Sri Lanka and I stayed in Dubai for 20 days, and then we had to go back. So we went back to Sri Lanka, and I sat on a beach and I thought I'd been bitten by a mosquito. That's what started this whole thing off. I thought it was a mosquito bite. Anyway, the minute I made the connection between it was the first weekend back in Sri Lanka after the terrorist attack, and then I started journaling on the topic, and I just got a piece of paper and I thought I'm just going to start writing the first thing that comes into my head. And then I started to make the association between my skin, and a lot of the people that were in the attacks talked about the skin in various different ways. Glass was in their skin, glass was in their hair, Every story I heard throughout this whole period was to do with skin. And then that's when I realized that's what it was. So then I found a fantastic coach and I talked to her for 1 hour. I cried for about 55 minutes of that 1 hour. I told her every single thing that I hadn't told anybody at the time, because it was a police case. It was like a very heavily guarded police case. So I just told her everything. For 55 minutes, I cried. 1 week later, the skin rash started to go. Isn't that unbelievable?
It is the power of the brain to effect changes in the body is just remarkable. The skin, it can make hair fall out. One of my patients had a completely paralyzed stomach and the organ of digestion, not the abdomen. It just, it normally contracts to grind up the food and to pass it on into the intestine, and his stomach was just sitting there doing nothing. And, I had never been taught that such a thing was possible, that the brain could do that, but uncovered a source of fear that young man was dealing with and was able to get it into his conscious awareness and have a discussion about it and give him some new ideas around it, and his stomach just went back to normal. But, that's my specialty of gastroenterology. It was just a shock to me that it could reach that level. And, the same with your rash, just a striking visual change. I wonder also if people with lighter skin were more often targeted in the riots that took place, and that might have had something to do with it as well, why it manifested in your skin, as a source of fear, being in that environment, that something could happen again.
Do you know what it was? I felt so bad for the people that didn't make it. I didn't want to forget them. And I didn't feel like it was fair. So I think it was like, especially the restaurant that was one of the targets in the hotel, we went there all the time. Like, that was a place we regularly visited. And I kept thinking, like, why them and not me? And so I think it was like almost like self-punishment, so that I suffered because they suffered,
Yeah, survivor guilt is often the term that is used for that experience, and clearly a very real thing, and just horrendous to be literally in the center of all that. And so the rash hasn't come back, I assume, and the back pain hasn't come back. Any other new symptoms that have appeared?
I still have scars from the skin issue, but I look at them now and I'm like, it just makes me laugh because I'm so grateful for this whole thing that we're all doing. It's incredible. And then for the back, absolutely nothing. Actually, I just 2 weeks ago did my first Olympic distance triathlon. So
oh my goodness,
I've gone the other way. Now I've got my health back. I'm doing all sorts of anything physical. Right there, I'm doing it. So Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if I remember, that's a mile swim and a 10K at the end and a long bike ride in the middle.
Yeah, 40K bike ride, yeah, you're right. And then a 10K run at the end. And it's the Middle East, it's boiling hot. So it was like drinking one water and tipping one water on my head every few meters. It was an experience.
Well, and something that no one would ever have expected 10 years ago, that you would ever be able to do that. That's a remarkable change. And again, it's great evidence of the power of our minds, not only to cause debilitating illness, but also to be the source of healing as well. That's an amazing story. If people want to reach out to you for coaching, where would they do that?
Via my website, it's just my name, gemmamcfall.com, even it's my email as well, gemma@gemmamcfall.com.
Okay.
I'm lucky enough to be the only person with this name.
That's great. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers, or any questions that you have for me?
Gosh, I could talk to you, Dave, for like hours, literally hours. But yeah, no, I think I feel super complete. I think this was a great conversation, and I just hope somebody listening will have that light bulb moment when they think, I can do something. I can take back control, you know.
Yeah, it's again a remarkable turnaround. And I'm so grateful that you shared this story. I think it'll be highly meaningful to everyone who sees it and give people hope. So thank you very much.